make use of this wonderful facility, and Jenny Williams and Remax, thank you very much for the sponsoring of the coffee and the cookies. I'm sure the community will all does appreciate it. Absolutely. In terms of apologies, we have 2 apologies from within the community. The first one is from Anne Bureau, and the second one is Diane Easy. They're unfortunately unable to join us this evening. We've also had apologies from Justin Croucher, the chairman of the Neighbourhood Watch, and one of the EXCO members from the Ratepayers Association, who's unfortunately travelling for business. Councillor Bloer van Minnen and Willem Steenkamp, the terrible trio who gave us a hard time 2 weeks ago, unfortunately could not be here this evening. That was confirmed in a meeting. However, both of them have been on the phone with me today, and they have both committed to the statements that they've provided, which I'll take you into a little bit later. In terms of proceeding, tonight we've got quite a hairy feedback session. There's a lot of feedback to provide, so what we'll do is we'll try and go through it as quickly as possible. If there's any pertinent questions, please just raise your hand and let's deal with those questions as and when. And we'll give you the best answers that we possibly can. But before we do proceed on to the portfolio update, I think if we could, has everybody received the minutes from the last meeting? Everybody comfortable? Can I please have a nomination to approve it? Alex? And the second? Ron Bontes? Okay, so we'll proceed to the portfolio update. The first one I'll deal with quickly while Stephen is in the back. From a finance perspective, our membership has grown by nearly 100% in just short of 2 months. We're now sitting with 87 members. That is 87 voices in the community. For a community of 133,000, I'd like to ask everybody next month to please come with 2 of your best friends and 2 of your neighbors. We need 133,000 voices before the city takes us seriously. Please, we need to grow this. We need to grow our membership. Okay, I'd like to ask Des Palm just to step forward, please. Des is going to deal with the meeting he attended earlier this week with myself. He's also going to give you a bit of background information. Before I forget, please, one welcome I didn't announce earlier is Councillor Haskin. He's joined us from the ACDP. He is a City Council official, and it appears that he's the only one here this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Our beloved 1117. I want to go a little bit back in the history of just back into this year, where we were in a meeting and I've raised a document which was called the Informal Settlement Status Document, of which we'll talk about later in terms of it being fraudulent or not. I remember raising the document in a meeting and showing it to Councillor Norma Gross, and I'm quoting what she said to me on a Facebook message: let's put the record straight, stop circulating old information like we did at the joint public meeting. What's interesting is, at that stage already she referred to this as being an old document, so obviously it must have been out there somewhere. We all know about the meeting, or most of you were there at the library, and again we were told that this is a fraudulent document. So I had the opportunity on Cape Talk to ask one question to the MEC, and I referred him to a previous chat he had on the same radio show, where he actually emphatically stated the city and the provincial government is certainly not the source of the document. I then asked him, took him back to a statement that he made on the 27th of November 2013, when he met with a group, and I'm going to do my best on this one, Ogimitoholo Masekafa, which we all know was the group of protesters that took this Cape Town city centre apart. And he actually, again I'm quoting from a statement he made, which is on the COCT website. During this afternoon's meeting with the leaders of LGBT, I presented the information they requested, which we are also making available to the press today. And then the statement goes on to say, see the attached PDF. So when you clicked on that see the attached PDF, that exact same document opened on the website. So my question to the minister was, or I asked him to explain this, and he replied something to the effect of, I never said the document was fraudulent. So there's a lot of things around this document which is obviously very vague. Now, in the meeting at the public library, what was very interesting, a gentleman, I can't recall his name, I think it was Mr. Kunz or something, stood up in this meeting and he said, you must remember the City of Cape Town has to put forth a proposal to the National Treasury, otherwise they will not receive a grant. So my first reaction was, okay, so you're lying to central government. But then I went a bit further and I started seeing what exactly happened. And then the MEC himself made a reference to the HDA, which is the Housing Development Agency. The Housing Development Agency, although it was then said that they are a national body, that's one thing about the City of Cape Town. They play it, it's either the City of Cape Town, or it's the Metro, or it's this guy, or it's that. You never speak to the guy that's responsible. So that evening, they clearly said, this is an HDA issue. It is not us. Don't lead us over there. So I went into the HDA's website and I saw that already in 2011, the HDA has put out a tender inviting proposals for Earth 1117. Now this is 2 years before we started talking about this document being a fake or a fraud or not. I actually spoke to the company in Johannesburg that won the tender and did actually put forth a development proposal to the HDA for Earth 1117. And another interesting fact on the HDA's website, it actually says that the HDA may act on behalf of a local authority or provincial government under a financial mandate. So my question to the City of Cape Town would be very simple. Did you guys appoint the HDA to do a development proposal on 1117, whilst you're so very actively denying the fact? I'm actually going to leave 1117 there, Mr. Chair, because you're going to take up on the other aspects of the document being believable or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Palm. I see there's an interested party. Councillor, please, by all means.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Grant Haskell. I'm a councillor in the city. Just 2 minutes to say thank you to the chair and to the ratepayers for active involvement in what's going on in the city in your area. It's very important to have 1,800 people at a public meeting 2 weeks ago is huge in the city. We just don't get that kind of response from ratepayers. So to have an active ratepayer involvement in what's going on in the city is very important. So thank you to all of you, the chair, CPF chair, and everybody involved. I wasn't here at the last meeting. I heard about it. The next morning I went onto the web. When I hear fraudulent documents, that's very interesting for me. I was the previous chair of SCOPA in the provincial legislature up until last election. So I heard fraudulent documents and I thought, well, that's very interesting. Let me go onto the website and see what I can find. I typed in, this is on the city website, I typed in 1117 or Earth 1117, and I found 11 documents on the first page, all of which refer to Earth 1117. The earliest one is August 2009, a draft for comment on the Blauberg District Plan, the SDP and the EMF. It's Environmental Management Framework and the Spatial Development Plan. Right? The Spatial Development Plan is the city's overarching plan for all development across the city, no matter what that development is. That's the SDP, approved in about 2012, if I recall correctly. Earth 1117 is stated there in 2009 as being the use is for medium density residential development, mixed use development, low density bordering the conservation area. So it's mixed use and low density at the border of the conservation area. August 2009 basically says the same things, but the city wants to, there's a significant opportunity to meet biodiversity requirements and contribute to housing and public facility needs. So there's biodiversity, 3 priorities there I'm hearing of what the city sees 1117 being for. 1, biodiversity. Right, that's the environment, so that's the BCA protected. Contribute to housing and public facilities, and we know that the broader area doesn't have a great expanse of public facilities. There's 1 police station, there's 1 public hospital, there's 1 private hospital. How many police vans? 3? 2. Maybe 2. So when they start talking about public facilities, we're talking about all of the cities, talking about all of those things. Of course, to get SAPs to come and do anything is a different challenge sometimes. That requires a different process. But all of those things are public facilities. Libraries, schools, public schools, which is where the public schools are, Tableview High. So these and that, yeah. All right. So
can I just make one remark?
Sure.
I was for these 6 years the expert of the TVRA Ratepayers. The TVRA Ratepayers was the only organization who objected to further development into parklands. The condition that we took back our objection was at Rivergate, a criminal court, a police station, whatever, there are facilities planned in regard to development. Now from the city to say they want facilities here is rubbish, because the facilities were planned there. That's it.
I hear you. Thank you for that. In 2011, 1117 was mentioned as, again, mixed-use development, horizontal and vertical integration. That's talking about people with different economic abilities. Context-appropriate intensity, well, that you can understand as anything. But I understand that the city wants to develop the property when it gets it, and to respect the context that is the broader Tableview, Blaauberg area. That's how I understand it. It's got to be developed first before we know that. They talk about a high density development is anything with 40 dwelling units per hectare or more. 40 dwelling units per hectare or more. Just remember that quickly. This site 1117 would need an EIA, an environmental impact assessment, where conflict occurs with natural ecosystems. So the city seems to be very conscious. I'm only just getting into this now. I don't live here, I live in Sea Point. This is not my area, and I don't deal with planning and environmental matters. So I'm interpreting what I see here in front of me, which is the city's documents on this earth. 2012, 1117 is described as being a strategic state-owned site, owned by the National Department of Public Works. So the city wants to get ownership of 1117 for the sake of mixed-use development. The planning has been looking like since 2009. It's seen as in 2012, the final draft of the Blaauberg District Plan, the same plan that I mentioned earlier. There's now a final draft in this one. It's seen as resolving a number of public objectives, particularly public housing. The use would be mixed-use residential for a mix of uses, facilitate provision of public facilities and a range of entry-level and subsidy housing opportunities. The city talks about 5,000 development units. The extent of the land is 277 hectares. So if you divide those into each other, it sounds like a medium to low density housing opportunity. It sounds like. The province, which is the one, if I understand what Des is saying, that document is also, I pulled downloaded that as well. It doesn't look fraudulent to me. That talks about 13,880 dwelling units, which then puts that into a high density. That's over 40 units, dwelling units per hectare, as far as I can understand it. Anyway, one thing I do know about planning and environment in the city is that development is seen to be taking place north of the city, right? This corridor from Milnerton north through to Atlantis is seen as a very important sector, area of the city to develop into. There's mention in one of these documents, I drew 11, those are the first 11 that I could find. I posted them, I put them into, I just drew out what relates to 1117, and I posted it on Facebook pages yesterday morning. The ratepayers, frustrated ratepayers, and I think it's the Neighbourhood Watch Facebook pages. So I've got it here, and what I'm telling you, what I'm giving you now is what I've extracted on the most important things from it. So I don't want to take too long, but what I can say is that certainly the land seems to be sought by the city. I didn't find it on the current year's budget for 15-16. The budget that we've just entered into, the budget year we just entered, I didn't find it there. First scan, I've looked for it, I can't find mention. I have mention of Happy Valley as a place where meetings will be held, but I don't find mention of budget being allocated from the city for development of 1117. So that says to me that it's not on the cards in the next budget year. We know also that from these documents that the city is waiting for the National Minister to approve a proposal to develop that land. Public infrastructure and some housing and mixed use. Cautious about what happens next to the BCA. Right? That's the context that I'm picking up from the city's documents. So it's difficult to be saying, for me to be saying without looking at and not having been here, whether those documents are fraudulent or not. But certainly from what I can find on the city's website, and I'll do more searching, I'll find the Human Settlements Portfolio Committee will have been dealing with Earth 1117. If it has, what have they been saying about that's the portfolio? The Planning and Environment Portfolio Committee would have been dealing with Earth 1117. This kind of documentation doesn't appear on the city's website without going through certain political processes and administrative processes. And those would be proposed by the officials, and they would go through the sub-council here, must have had a sight of certain of these documents, the sub-council. The ward councillors would know about it, which therefore means they would know about it. The Planning and Environment Portfolio Committee, which has been, the name has changed, but the Portfolio Committee that deals with planning and environmental matters, and human settlements. The fact that human settlements is involved with it at all says to me, as a councillor not on any of those two portfolio committees, that human settlements deals with housing matters, right? It means a portion of that land. One doesn't know how much until we've seen that proposal that went to the National Minister. A portion of that land, a percentage of it, will be used for housing of people with low income, household income up to 15,000 Rand a month income. It's gap housing, etc. They're talking in these documents about cross-subsidization, I mentioned. They're talking about integration and inclusion. Now, these are all principles that I think most of us would appreciate and would support. But I don't think anybody appreciates and supports a lack of information and a lack of transparency. So I'm hoping that, having put it on the Facebook page, and I'll look for more, and whatever I find, I'll just post onto the Facebook page, because it is out there. These are public documents. If it's on the city's website, there's no secret about it. So I'm hoping that I'll just keep feeding you information, just to keep you informed, and if I can come to other meetings, or to be of assistance, or to point you in the right direction at least, then that I can be helping you in that way. Chair, I'm hoping that I've added something.
I believe you have. Councillor.
Ma'am.
Hi, good evening. My name is Shuda. I want to just understand something. You're saying that in order for those documents to be on the city's website, it would have gone through a process, i.e. through sub-council. where our councillors, our local councillors are. Am I understanding that right?
Well, I'm going to look at that, but it won't appear there with the officials just having drafted it without it going through some kind of political oversight and working. So the portfolio committees would be the first port of call. The portfolio committees that deal with the district plan for city space, the development plan, that would go through that relevant portfolio committee. They would definitely have had to deal with it before it appears on the
So
site.
how do we find out?
Well, I'll go through all the agendas and look for it. It's not a problem.
Okay, and then my second question is, at the meeting, I don't know if you listened, there was a couple of recordings uploaded onto the internet of the meeting at the library on the 22nd. I don't know if you've listened to any of them.
No.
Okay. Perhaps do that, because there's something that that confused me a little bit. The minister said in that meeting, he stated that a plan was necessary in order to give it to national government. And that was the plan that the city came up with. So it sort of sounded like we needed to provide them with something, and we did, and that was what we provided them with. However, it's not true. So I don't understand, and I'd just like to get some clarity on that.
I've read it somewhere here, that a proposal, in fact, it's in the provincial government. What is that? It's in the provincial government page on the. I don't see a page number, but it mentioned here the property has been valuated and a development plan developed and forwarded to the National Department of Public Works. The submission relating to the release of this property to the city for human settlements awaits ministerial approval. So it seems like to me that says to me, but this comes off the relevant websites. It can't be fraudulent if it's sitting on, you take responsibility for your own documents. I don't understand that. That's not. I also previously was the deputy mayor of Cape Town. Helen Ziller is our mayor. I was deputy mayor there. So I've got some understanding of the way political processes work in the city. It may not have come through the sub-council, but it must have gone through the portfolio committees that deal with human settlements and environment and planning. It must have. So a look through their minutes of their meetings for the last year or two, or relevant things, I'm sure we can find information on it. This is a provincial government page presentation that I'm looking at here, talking about the 13,880. I don't know to what extent the city and the province have been working together on merging their information and their proposals, because they're talking about 13,880. He's talking about 5,000. I don't understand that kind of disparity.
Okay, so the $1 million question. So the proposal was put forward to national government. So national government accepts the proposal and say, hey, okay. And the land is then transferred or bought, or whichever way, to the city. Does this mean that the city has to go with that plan, or can they say, once they've got the paper in there, and say, okay, that's cool, we're going to build a park there?
It depends. It depends.
I don't know how
It would depend on the minister's decision, I would imagine. You'll recall for the stadium, the Cape Town Stadium, there was a record of decision that the provincial minister, MEC Esop, had, that has bound the stadium and the city to certain uses for the stadium, that we have to change the record of decision in order to change what happens at the stadium. Unless the national minister puts a similar record of decision, if it's formalized in that way, if it's a go-ahead, if it's more vague and it leaves the city to determine what it wants to do with it, then that's fine. What the city has also been saying in here, make no mistake, is that there is a requirement for public participation. That appears, that's repeated a number of times. Right? So that therefore means that if the city's put a proposal there and said we will have to discuss with the public before we proceed with the proposal, I don't know what the proposal says, but if the minister says, yes, okay, you can have the land and go broadly in that direction, then that's giving it, that's flexible enough for the city to discuss with the ratepayers and other interested and affected groups and then to take the process forward with everybody involved. The proposal then would have to be tabled at meetings such as this, but that's only once it's approved and the transfer or buy or whatever the process. That's also up to the minister. I'm not too sure what the proposal says. I'm going to look for that proposal. I don't know if that's a public document or not. I don't know.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't want to take too much of your time, Chair.
Sorry, I just want to make a note. That same document was then given to protesters to pacify them and say, we will give you 13,800 houses in Blouberg, just don't break Cape Town. Because that's where we got that PDF. So it must please be noted that the DA or the city lied, number one, to national government, then they lied to protesters, and then did they lie to us?
Yes.
And now they're branding us forgers, or
And
what's
now
the
they're
story?
accusing us,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I can't comment on that.
That
I wasn't here,
document
but
is the PDF.
I pulled this,
yeah.
off the website. So
We'll show you how we found it.
It's got all the look and feel of it being a provincial government. It's got everything that I've seen plenty of these provincial government presentations printed in my years in provincial legislature. This is a standard presentation. So, if people go and fiddle with it, that also is odd.
It's actually, if you go and look at the document properties, you can see it was created 27 November 2013. It was modified 2 hours later by Bruce Oom, who's the director of the director of communication for the minister. So if I'm not an IT specialist and I can figure it out, I'm very concerned about who's running our city.
One of the other, my parting principle to be exercised by the ratepayers is to say, well, the ratepayers elected the councillors who are here in this area, and they should have
They're not
to.
here. Where are they? Did they make excuses?
Well, we've got ward councillors here.
Where?
Ward councillors should be here, and they should be.
There's not one here.
But that, in terms of transparency and accountability, that's a necessary thing to do, right? And I'll leave you with that. Mr. Channing, the one person I do know in this area, Mr. Channing.
Thank you, Councillor Askin. I just want to raise the point of public participation in this meeting so that it is minuted and that the EXCO can take it further. I don't know what you mean by public participation, because for years in this area, the only public participation was to refer it to ward committees. And at this moment of time, as a ratepayers association, we do not have adequate representation on ward committees, and it's flung in our face that you've had a chance through your reps on the ward committees for the public participation. And this happens over and over again, and we, for the first time, had a true public meeting when we met in the library at Blouberg, which we'd never had before. And I'm sure that if we had genuine democracy being exercised here, there should be more of those meetings.
I agree with you. I just think that it's for the ratepayer organisations to make sure that when the city advertises public participation, that the ratepayers are informed and then attend, are well informed of what the issue is, research and come to the meetings. It may not be limited to ward committees. I would imagine it would be the sub-council. There would be a 30-day or a 60-day comment period that the ratepayers and the associations can comment in writing. You can appear at the sub-council. At the sub-council meeting, you requested from the chair that you want to present your comments on a proposal in front of them on that agenda. Then you get 5 or 10 minutes to do that. There's many ways of participating that it's not always clear. Sometimes it's just because it's complicated for people who don't deal with it every day. Other times it's just because the city doesn't make it easy to understand, because they don't want to. It's 30 days, and that's it. And nobody hears about it, nobody comments on it, and then at the end of the period, 4 million people are affected, but there's 100 comments. I don't understand that, but it's always the case. So it's, in the government gazette and the newspaper, that doesn't suffice necessarily. There's public organisations, there's organisations that is around the city as a matter of fact, an audit should happen that ratepayers associations get invited.
Sorry, Councillor Askin, I'm going to just say to you as well that this community objected to informal trading, and there were hundreds of objections. 2,300 objections, of which the majority have suddenly disappeared.
If I may, sorry, I am a subcommittee member. My name is Mandy Donata. I'm on Ward 23 subcommittee, and I must say that we have noted, minuted various issues, such as the informal trading, such as fireworks. We are whitewashed. We represent the interests of this community, and our councillors don't pay attention to what is being said in the subcommittee with minutes. So I have a serious in terms of how our ward councillors, who were duly elected, claim to represent the community, and then because they have a political agenda, sell out the community for their own political gain. And I don't think that should be acceptable in a democracy. I don't think it's acceptable in this community. And it's about time that we stand up. The only thing that I can think of why we're being driven in this direction is that the city might want us to become an improved district. Because if you look at the IDP, we are guaranteed certain rights in terms of our IDP. We guaranteed safety by the city. We guaranteed that there will be maintenance. Those things are not happening in this area. Why are we being isolated? Why are we, as a community, having to face up to our councillors and having to fight with them to represent us fairly? And not spend our money adequately. And by way of example, and I'm sorry I'm harping on this issue, but I cannot believe that the city saw fit not to maintain our beachfront, not to do the paving on the beachfront, but they saw fit to put 17 benches in there for 88,000 rand. If that is not ridiculous, then I don't know what is. But they can't maintain the dues. So I understand where Leo comes from with the frustrated ratepayers association. I'm backing them to the hilt. But we cannot tolerate this anymore. Our voices need to be heard. We need to stand up as a community. Everybody needs to be at the ward committees in the numbers such as this, 60, 70, 100, 2,000 people. We don't hear anymore. But they cannot then turn around and say, but we didn't represent ourselves. This community needs to stand up, and they need to take responsibility for themselves. They cannot just complain.
Councillor, thank you very much. Mr. Mata, it's not very often I say to somebody from the city who represents it on sub-council, but you blow me away tonight. Just out of curiosity, I got a tip-off this week saying, be careful of Mr. Mata, she's on sub-council, she's a spy. Do I even need to respond? Ward committee. I do, however, want to say that your input into the community, your sharing of valuable information is appreciated. You are the only representative that I know on ward committees who actually shares information on a regular basis. There's always something coming out. Now, let me explain that at last month's meeting, we discussed ward committees and representation, adequate representation, effective representation. Well, we've had our meeting with Mr. Peter Deacon. He is the ward committee manager. Am I correct for the terminology, please? Right, city manager for the sub-council. Please forgive me, rank amateur. Sub-council one. Anything else? No? Okay, and in a loose conversation, he agrees with everything we said in that meeting. We need effective representation where it counts at ward committee. That's where we need it. As the chairman of the Ratepayers Association, I had to put on my ugly boots today, and I wrote to two representatives in both wards 23 and in Ward 107, and I've asked them to tender their written resignation so that we can put one of the committee members into those chairs as quickly as possible. We need somebody there that this community has voted for, somebody that this community has said, we have confidence in you. And the interesting thing that has come out is, from our meeting with Peter Deacon, is that there are options available if those resignations are not tendered. There is an agreement in place with all members who sit on those committees, where they give the city and they give the ratepayer associations or the CBOs that they represent an undertaking to represent the community's interests, to feedback both to the community and to the city in terms of what public sentiment is. If inadequate feedback is provided, we sit with a situation where we find ourselves today. The good news before we proceed, at 5 o'clock this afternoon we had 87 members. By the time the meeting started we had 97. So the 10 new members that joined up tonight, welcome all of you. Thank you very much for giving us your vote. And your voice, more importantly. Before we get into the really interesting stuff, you're all aware that last month we, in an attempt to realign itself and bring the Ratepayers Association back to where it belongs, and that is ratepayer issues, we discontinued the safety and security portfolio. It wasn't a fairly hard decision to make. I don't believe that the ratepayers is a safety and security cluster member. We have our interest to look after, and we have the Community Police Forum, we have the Neighbourhood Watch, and I'm not that strong that I can defend myself against, I think, close to 1,400 people who now represent us in the Neighbourhood Watches and the CPF combined. These are the guys who look after us. We will be referring all safety and security related issues to these guys, this team that aren't there. I've asked the chairman, Johan, to join us tonight. We will have a representative from the CPF at every single Ratepayers Association meeting going forward. They will take your questions, they will give you answers, and what we can't answer, they will come back and provide feedback on. I think better representation than that, through already established networks, through already established communication channels. We can't ask for better. Johan, would you like to just give a presentation on yourselves, please?
Thank you, Leon. Those of you who don't know me, Johan van der Berg, Chairman of the CPF. I used to be the chairperson of the Table View Ratepayers Association as well. Thank you, Sheila. I know a lot of faces around the table, and I've certainly learned a hell of a lot since I started. I owe quite a bit to the lady sitting to the left, who has taught me a lot about the politics, about the way things operate in the political scene. Now, I did put up quite a bit of a presentation about the CPF, but I actually don't think I want to bore you guys with the details. I think tonight is very clear. It's about how do we as community members raise our issues in terms of safety and security. I think Leon's decision, the group's decision about the safety and security portfolio is important to understand how your concerns are still being raised and how they are taken to the correct forums. The ward committees is an extremely important vehicle. I know that the city uses it very frequently as an excuse for how we are supposed to participate with them. I decided when I heard that the first time to really investigate. I even stood up here with a few presentations on how this whole structure works to the Ratepayers Association at that stage. And I started learning. It's been a 2.5-year journey which led me to the point where I realized it was imperative that we do have representation on the ward committees. Now, when I started my tenure at CPF last year in October, one of the first motions that we put forward to our organization at the time was to elect representatives to go and sit on those ward committees immediately, even though we knew there was no seat for us at that stage. The election process of the ward committees, to me, is still a little bit vague. They don't really document clearly when they can take people on the ward committees. Very much so, if there's a seat open, they will take, and then once a year they will have an election process. But I couldn't get a lot of information about the whens and the wheres about this. And we have due process to follow, so we didn't want to wait for them to say 2 weeks and we have an election and we're not ready for that. So we chose our representatives when I started, and we waited patiently. The day came, and 2 months ago, for the first time, we actually got representation for the first time on all 3 ward committees. You had a bit of a change in your leadership and structures, and there's been some administrative things that needed to happen. But I attended my first meeting last month, and I wrote a whole report on what was discussed there and sent it on to us, onto our organisation and onto our members. So here I will go into a little bit of what the CPF is and how it operates. The CPF is an organisation, much like yourselves, that is democratically constituted organisation. It's got a constitution that is adopted by CPF national, CPF provincial structures. It's got a cluster structure with regards to Milnerton. I think there's now 8 or 9 police stations in the Milnerton cluster that sits together as CPF. And then at station level, CPF has its own executive, its own structures. And then they even break it further down to the 3 sectors within the area has its own CPF. So it's very much a tiered organisation with different structures, each tier having its own chairperson and its own elective process for the rest of the executives. Now, the membership is not like the Ratepayers Association. Our membership are only organisations. They're only organisations such as yourselves who choose one person, normally your chairperson, to come and sit at the CPF plenary meetings, become a member of the organisation and elect these representatives. Now, in saying that, that makes it very clear for me who I represent when I am working with SAPS, when I am sitting on these ward committees. I am still representing you. Your organisation voted me into office. One of your representatives was there at our AGM and elected me to be the chairperson and elected the rest of our executives. And that's why I think where Leon came from with these concerns about the safety and security portfolio, we do try and focus our efforts very much on safety and security in the area, and thinking a lot about what it means to prevent crime for all of us. I'm a resident here. I want my child to grow up in a safe environment. I do not want anybody to be a victim of crime like I was many times, unfortunately. So in that sense, the CPF is one of the few bodies in this country that is strong in its legislation, where it comes from, how it is constituted. It is the SAPS Act 68 of 1985, if I remember correctly, or 1995, where national government actually made a decision that it had to force the police service to engage with the community. So CPF is a structure that is mentioned there, and it enforces the station commanders in the entire country to set up CPF structures that allow them to communicate with the community. So we have SAPS at every one of our executive meetings. They come to our plenary meetings. They give us the opportunity to present anything to them, and they listen to us. We have a very good, close relationship with our local station, with our local captains for the individual sectors, and it is our responsibility to keep the community informed about the ins and outs of safety and security. We have a very active group. I have wonderful people working with me. See one of our chairpersons for Sector 2 sitting here as well, David Harris. Thank you for coming. We have such a wide group of people that are involved in safety and security, and the projects that come out of this are tremendously good. It's all community stuff. You see projects like community cleanups, and it's not directly associated to crime. We're not trying to catch criminals, but we're thinking about the things that we can do preventatively, socially, and community building that will help us to address crime in a different manner. Social crime prevention, we have Give Responsibly. We're trying to engage with the city frequently to try and get them social development into the area so that we can address the vacancies, so we can address homelessness in the area. So these are all the kinds of projects that we're talking about, and the way that we operate. Your chairperson and his executive, I know, as I said, I know a lot of them, are very welcome to bring any of the issues to our plenary meetings as well on a monthly basis, and we take those issues further. I run a tight ship, as I said, Pam was kind to teach me quite a few things from my days over here. So everything you give to us will be handled, they will be tabled, they will be executed through a process of motion so that we can have resolutions, we have our minutes, we are a transparent organization, so all of our executive meetings are open to scrutiny in the end because we publish our minutes. We are very, very comfortable to let the world see what we're doing. So that's CPF in a nutshell. I don't think it's necessary for me to say too much more, just to know that there are a lot of people that care about trying to better the safety in the area. There's a question from the floor. It explains a lot about how we operate. Gives all of our aims, our objectives, what we want to achieve is all on there. I have, if I can use the opportunity to advertise a little bit, on Mandela Day, the Give Responsibly campaign is launching in the area. I've been trying since my day in the Ratepayers Association to get the Department of Social Development to come into our area and launch the campaign. Maybe some of you have seen this in the City District. They actually have Give Responsibly as a campaign there. They have a whole social development program where they motivate the public to rather give to non-profit organizations, NGOs, who can better assist people coming from the streets. So it's not about not giving to them at all, it's just giving through the correct channels so that in the end they do not become dependent on the giving. We unfortunately in this area are very kind-hearted people. I sometimes struggle myself, but to give a handout to somebody who's standing on the side of the street, even though it's good-hearted and I don't have in principle a problem with it, if you're not taking that person's hand and helping him as well, showing him that there's something else, or trying to motivate him, because he needs some motivation on what he can do with his life, what options are available to them. And there are many options that I can say. The city has many programs available. We have lovely non-profits in our area like TLC and so forth that can assist these people if they do have an inclination to get off the streets, to help them with training and education and so forth. So on Mandela Day, the 18th, we're going to be standing, quite a few of us, volunteers from the non-profits, from the Department of Social Development, handing out flyers from 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock in some of the shopping malls and so forth, so more details to follow. And then Carol Cunningham has actually put together a nice piece of paper, I hope some of you have received this, which asks the whole community to think about Mandela Day in a positive light and get involved. So we're asking that street captains, street committee captains in the area to do a clean-up on the day as well, to show your community that you care about the parks, that you know that a dirty park or an unkept park is something that shows the criminals that there's residents in the area that do not care. We want people to show the criminals that we actually care about our environment. We're asking you to join the Tableview Free Cycle. Shula Pronk has been the driver of the Free Cycle initiative for a very long time. If you don't know about it, go and read it. It's really interesting stuff. And then the neighborhood watches, those of you involved in neighborhood watches, to be out on the streets on the day. Let's see if we can get some visibility out there against our crime in the area. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions for me, I'll be available here, or just send me a mail, chairman@cpftableview.co.za. Thank you.
Johan, thank you very much for your time. All right, starting off with the feedback that we can provide, I would just like to ask that the community we service understands that last month was quite a hairy month for the Ratepayers Association. I'm sure you'll all be shocked to know that between the chairperson, the vice chair, and one of our key members, Mr. Justin Croucher, we had 3 deaths, all leading in the week before the meeting that was held in respect of 1117. And before anybody asks, we are not related. That is 3 key members all suffering a loss, and the guys came in. Now where I'm going with this is very, very clear, is whilst the TVRA was unfortunately focused elsewhere on personal issues, dealing with tragedy and loss, some very important members within this community stood up and they took it upon themselves to share the information in terms of Earth 1117. Now, we don't often get the ability to say thank you to them, and I know that if I mention names tonight, I'm going to embarrass people, so I'd rather not. But what's even greater is at this meeting, the city made the allegation of fraudulent documents. And that threw a spoke in everybody's wheel that was not expected. But what nobody realized with the allegation of fraudulent documents comes the sentiment that because you participated in sending invites out to the community to drum up support, that you are by default guilty of association. There's not many people who actually are aware of it, but I'm a forensic investigator by trade. And what I've done is I've gone and I've looked at the documents and I've satisfied myself. That's without any consultation with the city. I've satisfied myself by re-engineering the process to ensure that those documents are in fact available on the city's website. No document will go onto a secure site like the city's without due process. That is the relevant role players signing it off, and in certain cases even their own legal department signing it off. So what I did, I just want to check whether the gent is ready for me. Okay, what I did was I actually went and I videotaped a small section. It's going to take about 3 seconds. I'm going to load this onto the Facebook page as well. But have a look what happens when I type in the City of Cape Town, Western Cape Provincial Government. Takes me onto the website. I go into Provincial Government, News, 2013. I scroll down, I found 2 articles of importance. I open the relevant HTTP tags, and I pull up the document that refers to the media briefing, and you'll see I'm going to highlight the attachment. That was one of the 3 documents referred to as being potentially fraudulent. I see who the author of the document is, Bruce Oom, his contact details, the attachment's name. I can tell you how long it's been on the website. I then save the document. Well, I open it first, then I save it. That document look familiar to everybody? And I scroll down to page 17. We'll get there, I promise. And I'm going specifically to this page because that's the pertinent page of interest. And that's as it is live on the province's website. I'm now going to save the document because that's the only way I can get into the properties. I can check the integrity of the document. I pull it up, looks the same, feels the same, sounds the same, must be the same. And I'll scroll down to page 17 again. Unfortunately, I've seen this movie a couple of times, so I know how it ends. And woe behold, we found the same document that raised the anger of the city because we had access to it. What very few people didn't realize is that Willem Steenkamp, just before he called the documents false and forgeries, he boasted at how the city has all these documents available for people to peruse. It's a bit too much information. There it is, there, confirmed. So, what my biggest concern is at this stage is, although I'm happy to accept the city's investigation, and that's been confirmed, what is worrying me is that the heroes within this community are perhaps being outed as being perpetrators of fraud, and a big question mark is hanging over this community. And it's allowed this community to be redirected away from the issue on hand. And we are now all of a sudden more worried about fraudulent documents than what we are about Earth 1117. Earth 1117 is a reality, and we need to accept it. And we cannot afford for a single second as a community to take our hands off the issue. This afternoon I spoke with Mr. Palm about the open land of trade here in Blouberg, next to Blouberg Rise Primary School. In 2013, a member of the community inquired into the use of that piece of land, and at that stage, the city announced that it had been allocated for restitution purposes. Today, when we tried to find out what was happening, all is very, very quiet. Which means we need to be on our toes, we need to be the ratepayers association that the city does not want. We cannot afford to allow an employee of the city to walk home with an extra, with a tea bag, without us being aware of it. And we can only reach that with your support. I need support along all aspects. The city has embarked on a service campaign in terms of service delivery. They've incorporated Facebook functionality into their service requests, and they're calling for people to log complaints on Facebook. You've all seen the adverts. I'm going to be very brazen when I say to you, please ignore them. Stay away from logging requests on Facebook. What happens is, you log it onto Facebook, somebody from the city goes onto the Facebook page and then logs it onto the system service request page. And if they forget, your problem goes away. Facebook is not logged, whereas the service request is. It cannot be deleted, it leaves an audit trail, and it allows city management, when challenged, to question service delivery. Very, very important. Whenever we log something on the system, use the system request. It's called the C3. The city, much to my dismay, acknowledged to us in a meeting 2 weeks ago that they have budgeted for and spent close to 40 million rand on a system to manage that C3 system. It's called the EPIC platform. Now, 40 million rand is excessive. However, it's going to, in the bigger scheme of things, improve service delivery. When we get detracted and we go onto Facebook because it's quick and easy, the city says, oh, we didn't see it. Guys, stay away from it, please. More importantly, we've had 2 complaints from members of this very same community who have been excluded from the city's Facebook page. They've been banned. We've got ratepayers who are banned from the city's Facebook page. Not acceptable. If there's a problem, they need to raise the problem through the correct channels, and let's address those various community members. One, he's German. He translates everything from German to English. Is it easy to get lost in translation, especially when you're angry? Absolutely. But is that reason enough to bar somebody? Absolutely not. The second gentleman is an absolute gentleman. We all know the man, but he's barred from the city's Facebook page. So I'm going to ask everybody, please do not log or make use of a system that does not support us in the long run. If you log a service request, very, very important to recognize this is the silly season. We're a couple of months away from elections. If your guy on the street corner says to you, I can sort everything out for you, please do not give him the information. Report it through the Ratepayers Association. That is what we do. If you log a C3, let us know about it, so that we can manage them, we can ensure that service delivery is happening. Last week we had a complaint about rubbish not collected in a street in Parklands for 3 weeks. Guess where the majority of the complaints were registered? Facebook. Okay. We've all read the media release from last week, from the 1st of July, regarding the withdrawal of minibus taxis, 222 million in exchange for operating licenses and vehicles. This is national secret. What our councillors haven't been telling us for months, I discovered in 15 minutes today, and the penny dropped. The city budgeted 623 million in total for the taxi recapitalisation. Of that, they have only spent 410 million to date, and they have recovered, what I mean by recovered is 222 taxi drivers and operators have either handed in their vehicles or handed in a combination of their operating licence and their vehicle to the city. No payments were effected before the operating licenses or the vehicles were handed in, confirmed independently. The city has a target of 569 taxi operators' licenses that they are taking away. Think of it in realistic terms. It's the city saying to you, you can't be a woodcutter anymore, we're taking away your income. They've compensated those taxi drivers. The last round that's coming will take 90 taxis, the remaining 90 taxis, away from this area. And that will, I believe, will be at the end of August, 31st of August. According to the city's paperwork, there are only 90 taxis left in the Tableview, Dunoon area. Absolutely. We had a member of the community who sat last week and she counted, I think it was 130 taxis an hour.
130 taxis on Global Road in 1 hour.
130 taxis.
I have all the registration numbers.
Thankfully, Ms. Pronk is on the Exco, so she's friendly. Okay, the balance of those taxis, as far as the city is concerned, is made up of taxis from outside of the area who are travelling through the area, and also of pirate operators. And what they mean by taxis driving through the area, these are taxis from Guguletu that are bringing people to Bloberg Road, to Bayside, possibly even as far as Melkbos, that are routing through our areas, dropping off passengers and picking up passengers. These licenses will stay in effect, so we will sit with these taxi drivers up until My City has been implemented completely. They can't just bar the area because there's communities that are being serviced that don't have access to My City. Makes sense. However, on the 1st of September, and I discovered this today, that there will be a new unit being introduced called the, looking for it, the, really not as good as I thought I was, the Taxi Enforcement Unit. They will deal only with public transport. It's going to be made up of 225 members who are currently being trained and will be operational, and they will only deal with taxi violations, public transport violations, and yes, they will be active in our area.
How many will be active in our
Of the 225? Yeah.
That nobody's able to give me an indication as of yet. I've been asked to make contact with the city closer to launch date, mid-August, so middle of next month, we can actually inquire to those figures. And I have been told that there will be permanent representation in the area.
Do they fall under metro, law enforcement, or traffic?
Completely independent. They will fall under Alderman J.P. Smith, but they will be completely independent of traffic, law enforcement, and metro.
This unit already exists. This unit was introduced to us how many years ago, Mike? 3 years ago. It's combined like a ghost unit. It's only for taxis. They operated a few times and they disappear again. So the J.P. Smith is telling us of a new unit. What happened with the old unit?
But they've got new uniforms, new cars, and new badges. Look, we've got to have a positive outlook at some point. They've given us information. The best we can do is record those dates and hold the city accountable for it. This is the information I've been provided in terms of feedback of current issues. I know that there's a history in terms of what previous chair people have been told. We are constantly working. However, there are issues on hand. And in a meeting we had in fact 2 weeks ago with J.P. Smith, he not only explained to us the difference between law enforcement, the Metro Police and the Traffic Department, but he also explained to us the challenges that the city is currently facing in terms of budget. There's movement coming in the right area. I think we're looking, Sheila, please confirm for me, we're looking at about 120 new law enforcement people by the end of the year. And I think there's about 60 traffic officers currently on course that are coming onto our streets. These are the improvements we can expect in the short term. And all we can do is keep highlighting issues, keep showing the city pictures. The city does not like pictures. So we keep showing them the pictures, and we will keep showing them, and we will keep going on. The pictures that Mr. Mata referred earlier to the benches. I don't know if anybody saw the pictures that were on the Facebook page. I apologize in advance because I stole the pictures. And I put them onto lovely A4 picture slides, and when we met with the Speaker of the House, I showed him close to about 140 pictures. Water, fire hydrants being utilized to water our parks. The day after it's rained, rubble left by contractors. We had pictures of the hole by Bloberg Primary School that somebody described as big enough to fit 2 coffins into. And this is the information that we constantly have to give back to the city on the right level to get the results we're looking for. And the only way we can do that is with this community support. The EXCO cannot be everywhere. So if you have an issue, post it onto the Facebook page. Let us see it. Make us aware of it constantly.
I've got the figures for you. Plus minus 60 law enforcement officers by the end of this year. It takes 18 months of training traffic officers. 30 staff members, plus minus 30 staff members, will be part of the nighttime traffic in the city. In other words, the nighttime shift. At the moment, they don't have it. 115 members staff increase by the end of the financial year. Alderman Smith actually said we'll be lucky if plus minus 30 of them will be readily trained by the end of that period. Very lucky, he said, I wrote that down as well. In August, there will be a further staff increase, August of this year. May I ask a question while I'm here? You mentioned 222 taxis surrendered to date, taxis and operating licenses. Did he give you the exact number of taxis that they took in? That kind of thing. What was that number? That's the one question. And if you're talking about 623 million, budgeted for 569 taxis, you're looking at 1,094,903 rand per vehicle. Just buy a car.
Those figures were the figures provided to me by the city this afternoon.
I'm just asking, that's a program for a second-hand car.
Remember, it goes further than the purchasing of a second-hand vehicle. These are the gentleman's livelihood, and I'm going to refer to them as gentlemen. I'm going to be very diplomatically correct in front of the media. They are gentlemen until proven otherwise. But this is their livelihoods, this is how they derive an income, and obviously if the city is shutting them down, the city needs to compensate. Whether that is a correct amount or not, that I'm unable to get involved in that argument. What the city did say to me as well is that not all drivers have handed in their vehicles. The owners of the vehicle. The reason being is that the long distance routes from Dunoon to the Eastern Cape are very successful, they are very profitable, and a few of the owners have put decent business plans together to to allow the city with guarantees in place so that they will not drive the short routes. The downside to this is the 130 vehicles an hour we see is because nobody is policing it at this point in time. The red robots, we all know that they blatantly go through. I've seen a couple. I've even seen a photograph of a taxi driver urinating in a red robot by climbing out the vehicle. These are all things that the taxi enforcement unit will deal with moving forward. It's not a solution. We've appealed to Alderman J.P. Smith, and we will continue appealing to Alderman J.P. Smith. If there's any challenges immediately regarding things that we're not aware of, regarding taxis, don't hesitate to post the pictures. Share the information and allow us to help you. Alderman Smith, I've heard various comments about him, but during my time meeting with him, I find him to be very forthright, very down to earth and very directly to the point in terms of what he can do and what he can't do. And what was very clear was he was trying to effectively manage this community's expectations in terms of law enforcement, metro police and traffic enforcement. And there are huge budget concerns. The figure he quoted was literally an income needed of in excess of 57% to get law enforcement and traffic department to where they need to be. So we just need to be patient, but it doesn't mean that we can't complain. So the complaints, please keep them coming in. Any questions so far? One.
I just want to know about all the facts. It may be an ignorant, naive question, but why have we not got the likes of Musa Miyamani here or Patricia Dill? Why are they not attending these meetings if we've got such a big issue in our area? Because after all, we're voting for them in the elections. So they should be here. At least once to hear our complaints and how their city is treating our community. Local council. Give them a CD.
Okay,
so why does he do what he did with the live meeting? Why don't all the community members put a petition together like that and get them here?
can I give you the same answer I gave Councillor Brewer when I described the mayor? I quoted Hannah Montana. Don't talk to the person, talk to the hand. And that, unfortunately, is my opinion and definition of the mayor. She's not interested.
So who do we vote for in local elections?
I'm not going to answer that question. This chair, I'm apolitical. And I'm certainly not a politician. We need to get effective representation in the next election. We need it. We need councillors, ward committee members. We need more importantly, an interested ratepayers association, and people need to be held accountable. I'm tired of hearing, I sent this person an email and they ignore me. I've sent the same person 3 emails and they've ignored me. And these are things that we're going to be taking up with the city as and when we become aware of them. And so far, the meetings with the city have appeared to be going in the right direction. The city agrees with the Ratepayers Association that we need a city that will cooperate with the Ratepayers Association, and the city needs a ratepayers that will cooperate with them, which we're more than willing to do. However, to a point where we are receiving what we need as a community. I've made it very clear that public participation is this Ratepayers Association's end goal, and we need effective public participation, transparent public participation. We need people to have a say, not only a selected few. We need the city to recognize and give this Ratepayer Association and the community credit where credit is due. We are not children. We are not here for them to abuse. And I say that because I've seen the Facebook pages where the councillors have laughed at us. I'm sure all of us have. And it's just not acceptable. I don't think there's a single person in this hall who will tell me that they don't have a problem with a specific amount of our raised taxes leaving the area, going towards disadvantaged communities. We recognize that there is a social responsibility attached to that, but I'm going to quote a very strong-minded young lady who's very nice, who said to me, I don't have a problem until our roads have got potholes. Until we're not getting our rubbish collected, then we have a problem. And I don't believe that we're getting a fair deal out of the city right now. I really don't. So, yes, I am outspoken, yes, I am challenging, and I'm trying my hardest to be Mr. Nice Guy at the moment, because I don't want our councillors to say, oh, he's rude. Because that doesn't help anybody. But, and please understand this, I'm no fool. And I made that very clear in the communication today to Councillor Vermeulen in regards to the email that was sent out on Friday. There was a question beside.
No, I just wanted to say, maybe they should follow their own Give Responsibly campaign when it comes to spending our taxes.
Absolutely. What was the question?
It was a comment.
It was more of a comment that the city should give responsibly when spending our taxes. In fact, the one comment that does stand out when we met with the Speaker this week, and the Speaker is a no-nonsense man, is he turned around and he said to me that he's being overly cautious when it comes to this investigation because he's spending our money to fund it. But then there's a press release regarding 622 million rand for a taxi recapitalisation program, and the and just doesn't stop. So there are genuine concerns that we need to bring to the city's attention. Good piece of news is that the city is looking at reviewing their traffic calming policy. This will be available on the Facebook page tomorrow morning, the policy document. They need input from the community between the 1st and the 16th of August. What they're looking at doing is following, I suppose, the Johannesburg route, where they take four-way stops, make them into traffic circles with very high islands in the middle to actually force people to stop. So please, yes, but the ladies with the 4x4s drive straight over there. The ones in Johannesburg, literally if you drive over them, your car sits almost at a 45-degree angle. Have a look at the draft policy, make recommendations, approve, disapprove, but please copy the Ratepayers Association in. Very, very important, so we know what the community feedback is. The schools and old age homes are going to be the first ones to get them in terms of the policy, to try and slow traffic down in vulnerable areas. And the bad news is that before the policy has even been implemented, there's a backlog extending 7 years with 500 applications and a cost of 30 million. So that's all in the draft policy. There we go.
If they sell the taxis, they'll get the money back, wasn't it?
They are selling the taxis. The older taxis are being scrapped completely. The newer taxis are being sold outside the area.
So they can come back in.
As long as they are owned by somebody else. So if their brother buys them, not a problem.
The problem with the taxis is, I mean, in the past, they all had the route sticker on. You'd see so many of them. There's not even the maximum speed limit sticker on the 100 km an hour, never mind the route stickers. There's like nothing on there.
Those taxis are what we call pirate taxis. That was confirmed for me today. There is a huge problem with pirate taxis. The city recognizes it because of the void left with the legitimate taxis leaving. Some of the pirate taxis are from outside the area, some of them are within the area. The good news that I've learned is every taxi that is confiscated costs the taxi owner 7,000 rand to get back.
Sorry, on that, of the 130 photos that I took of the taxi on Gober Road in 1 hour, 7 had route markers on them. 7 out of 130.
Again, I'm happy you're on the X-Card. That is the reality, that is what we're facing. I'm sorry, I don't have it in me to try and whitewash it. That is the reality. That is what we're dealing with at least for another 2 to 3 months.
When it comes to the pirate taxis, we know that the Uber taxis are around 50. the last couple of months.
I believe so.
Yeah, so why can is now the private taxi? So private is in my eyes a lawless individual. He must not be allowed on our roads. So when they can impound Uber, they can also impound the private taxi. Finishing car.
Uber doesn't burn tires in the road.
Look, unfortunately, we all know what you're saying is very, very true. What's good for one is good for the other. The laws are currently being worked on in terms of provincial government's traffic regulations. We can only communicate our absolute dismay to the city, which we're doing on a regular basis. And again, with your support, your input, we can do a better job. Okay, time for feedback on informal trading. Sorry, Mr. Mata.
May I please, Mr. Chair, if I may, before you just give the feedback on the informal settlement.
Sorry, can you just speak up? I can't hear you.
Sorry,
Can you come closer?
Thank you, is this better?
Oh, no.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, just... How do I answer that comment? All right. Just for the record, please, if I may ask you to inquire from our audience how they feel about the fireworks that have been proposed on the beachfront, and also to give feedback then to JP Smith, who wants to ban the fireworks, as well as the fact that our beachfront has not been maintained, I would estimate, for the last 5 years, how the community feels about that, onto your list that you're dealing with Alderman Dirk Smith, as well as with JP Smith, if you don't mind, because those are very, very critical issues. It goes to our broken window syndrome. Our beachfront can't be maintained, so it's a haven for the baddies, the drug dealers, etc. Our security is starting to be threatened. Our security is going through the wall. Then just to get back, if I may, please, Mr. Chair, the issue with SPURF 1117. If you go to Malpos Village, which is in Ward 23, which forms part of our Sub-Council 1 zone, we've got a development there called Olive Close, which was sold by the city to a developer who was supposed to maintain that infrastructure for the indigent bush dwellers. That has never happened. In cahoots with the city, sorry, I rephrase. In conjunction with the city, the developer sold off the units without declaring it to the public. So now what is taking place is every owner in that development has to subsidize what they call social housing component. But what the city failed to note was the fact that they put indigent people into those homes. To date, we are struggling to get a certified roster of who's occupying those homes, but they're expecting those house dwellers to pay a monthly levy, whether it be 50 Rand, whether it be 100 Rand. Now, it's very pertinent. I know we're talking about the Malpos Ratepayers Association, but if 1117 is going to be exactly the same thing in our area. So are we then going to be forced to pay double taxation by way of paying rates and taxes on your property, plus subsidising a lower income group? It's a very contentious issue that's still going to explode very shortly. So thank you for your time.
Sorry, ma'am, the fireworks in Ijobi, right? The topic on the fireworks.
Yes.
That just went through sub-council now, the last sub-council meeting.
Yes, just for the record.
So what's the point now?
Well, they're saying in the correspondence from the ward councillors, and I'm sorry if I'm taking your time as a community as well, but what has been said, and I've got it on email from our ward councillor, when Alderman Dirk Smith took over the chairing of our meetings because we got rid of our previous ward councillor for non-performance, he actually noted for the minutes that we did not want fireworks on our beachfront due to the fact that it's a safety issue. The beachfront hasn't been maintained. Neighbourhood Watch wasn't informed in terms of the New Year's fireworks. There were kids blowing up fireworks underneath cars, etc.
We've noted, since our new ward council has taken effort, that our ward, specifically the Waves Edge community, does not want any fireworks in that area without public consultation. It's noted, it's on the ward minutes, and our ward councillor did not object. They just noted our concerns in terms of consulting with Neighbourhood Watch, but they didn't bother to consult with Neighbourhood Watch or CPA.
Sorry to interrupt you. So, Ward 23 is the entire area
beachfront, right from Dolphin Beach, all the way to Mount Boss.
So, at ward committee level, you guys indicated that you are objecting to the.
Justin was with me in that.
Doesn't matter. But it's on record that Ward 23 Ward Committee objected to the fireworks taking place on Lower Beach.
3 times.
Right. And it was approved last month.
According to the newspaper report, it's a matter of complaint. In other words, we are the only, please note, the only beachfront area in the entire Cape Peninsula that will look at having fireworks. I questioned my colleagues in Camps Bay, I questioned colleagues in Muizenberg, and asked them how did they get it right that they're not included in this so-called fireworks display. Why do we need to have fireworks?
Okay, but now you didn't answer my question. I'm sorry, Mandy.
Go again.
So, Ward 23 is the beachfront, right?
Yes.
And you people, your group, your ward committee objected 3 times.
Yes.
And it was approved last month. I don't know.
There's 2 votes of contention. The Sub-Council 1 meeting, chaired by Councillor Brenner, alright, have approved a proposal, in inverted commas. The newspaper report said it is approved by the city. So we don't know. And it's been put on the Ward 23 ward meeting on the 26th of July. I might have my day at 12. At 5:30. That's the one we attend. So if the public would like to attend that, ratepayers, please, I beg of you to be at that meeting, because it's about time our voices be heard. So, but I hand back to the chair. So I don't know quite what the situation is, if it's through the city already, or we still have it on our agenda to discuss on the 26th. Thank you.
I think the important thing is if we invite anybody to attend that meeting, let's not attach any documentation. We'll get that to the community. All right, any other questions before we can head towards informal trading? Right, informal trading, the last feedback we received was, the formal feedback was that the city had embarked on an investigation to determine whether the allegations in terms of our challenging the current status quo in terms of legislation and the authenticity of the public participation program was correct. We've left the city alone. I met with Councillor Bloor briefly earlier last week, and he confirmed that there was a Mako visit to Parklands by members of the Mako committee to check the lay of the land and to see whether they could trust the photographs that we've shown to them. What was interesting was that the city's invitation for me to attend that site inspection was withdrawn. I was asked not to attend it, and the city has now subsequently postponed that site visit to a later date. So the good news is we're now closer to informal trading than what we were a month ago. We have been unofficially told that informal trading is going away, and we were also told, and I hope everybody's having a good look at me, please, because I'm the person to be blamed when we have informal traders everywhere. I've addressed that with the Speaker of the city, and I've told him unacceptable. All we've asked for is that we have fair representation in terms of public participation. Councillor Bloor has stepped into the argument, and he's guaranteeing us that, and we will have to wait and see what's happening, although I've been told today that I will be invited to the next Mako meeting where this will be discussed. The bad news is, for everybody that says I've been rude, an email was received saying that the Mako wishes to thank this community because their actions have been interpreted not as being aggressive and belligerent, but we've been complimented for our transparency, proactiveness, and the way we've come aboard with the city to work towards exploring lasting solutions that will be beneficial to this community, which is exactly what we set out to do initially, not to fight with the city. So at least Mako is recognizing us. What is bad news is that the city's played their hand, and informal trading is now being set up in Melville, CBD, Retreat, Lakeside, Birdfleet, Edgemead, Pluttercliff, Lunga, Nyanga, Kryfontein, Wallesley, and Scottsville, North Pine. So it looks like this is becoming a city policy across the board to have informal trading everywhere, and so far we're the only ratepayers association that's actually managed to stop the city. So again, to all of us, thank you.
Why are you being blamed if there's informal traders everywhere?
Because I'm Jewish.
But why? Why would they blame you? Why would we blame you?
Because I'm the voice of the community. I'm comfortable with it. I really don't have a problem with it. If I'm being blamed for it, well, then so be it. As long as we get transparent participation, that's all I care about at the end of the day.
You know you're a phone in the arse, so you're going to clear it away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I haven't yet come across somebody who is completely against public participation. It is, we want to choose where it goes. We want to choose the format, and this is what I keep telling the city. That it's positive. If we can get the community buy-in, the community will support the initiative. We already have Table View Co-op, which I've advised Councillor Blue to please go online and look at, and there's no reason why the city can't support our local initiative as well. Give the guys an opportunity to sell their wares. Okay, this is the nasty one we're getting to now. This is the final one. If everybody has been reading Facebook over the last month, you will notice that the Ratepayers Association has taken a fair amount of hits from within a certain sector of this community. Rather than running away, hiding away, and not declaring the facts, I've decided tonight to bring these to the front, and I in fact invited those people who had posted the comments to attend tonight's meeting, where it would be discussed. If anybody can see them, please. They haven't bothered to attend. Over the last month, we've been asked why is the TVRA charging fees if it's not registered. The TVA is registered. TVRA is registered. We're a non-profit organization. We're entitled to fund ourselves through membership drives. Now, in an attempt to increase our membership and listening to the community's concern, we've gone 2 steps further. As from today, and this is in line with our constitution, we are going to have a pensioners discount. Pensioners are feeling the pain. So please sit down when I advise that from this point forward, all pensioners, their annual membership fee is in a token amount of 20 Rand. $93. I believe the age is 64 or 65. The second thing is that we also recognize that there are members within this community who feel that they do have something to offer or just want to attend meetings and have a say. Those members are welcome to join. All members of this community who are either ratepayers or bona fide lessees can join in with a membership. However, they won't have voting rights. I'm sorry? We're not going to check it. Our constitution says that the Ratepayers Association is open to all members of the community who are the ratepayers or who hold a lease. Now, if somebody comes along to the meeting, they will sign in the register. If they're a registered member and they have voting rights, they will sign on a different document. Those are the people that are going to be able to vote. What we want as the Ratepayers Association is I want every single member of this community to have a voice in this community. I'm not worried about whether the voice is associated to an informal trader, and I'm not worried if it's associated to a taxi driver. Every single person needs ownership of the property they own, they rent in this area, for us to get their buy-in to improve this area. If somebody doesn't have a vested interest, he has no concern. And that is a challenge. Other questions that have been raised, and I promise you they will get funnier, is that the Ratepayers Association, through the Western Cape Action Front, is thinly veiled the Freedom Front Plus supporters. I don't know whether I should be more insulted by the fact that I'm not apolitical or that I'm a Freedom Front supporter. But be what it may, this Ratepayers Association is apolitical, completely. We are made up of members of this community who have one thing in common, and that is the betterment of this area. We have people who are on this committee who are members of political organizations in terms of membership. Nothing is wrong with it, as long as those memberships don't influence their train of thought. One thing, okay, now let's scrap that one. I was going to have a nasty moment. Next one that has been publicized and put out there to the whole community is that the Tableview Ratepayers Association is fielding an independent candidate in the coming elections. The Ratepayers Association is not a political organization. We are a community-based organization. We look after the interests of this community.
Mr. Chairman, there's no reason that we can't nominate one to represent us. It doesn't have to be a political party to represent us in this area.
No, you don't have to have a political party.
It happened in Namibia. It started off as Swakopmund Residents Association, non-political party. It was a party or group that started just to represent the residents, that they know where the money goes, that the streets get cleaned up. And now these days, that in Namibia is the biggest opposition party, not political party, but party. The DTA is kaput, it's finished.
I hear you and I agree with you, but those are organizations that will be constituted and formulated by the communities. They will not be constituted by the Ratepayers Association. The minute we as a Ratepayers Association get involved in that, we fail in our mandate. We cannot be for any political party, we cannot be against any political party. And that is very, very important. And we have to maintain that integrity, otherwise we're failing the community in what we're trying to achieve. And if we do that, we're giving credibility to the allegations that we are politically orientated. We have to remain apolitical.
Is the city of Cape Town not run by a political party? Maybe I'm ignorant, I don't know, but who's running the city of Cape Town? We complain about the city of Cape Town who's run by a political party.
You are 100% correct. The city is run by a political party. We still haven't figured out who's running the city though. However, the minute we take them on from a political standpoint, we then become politically motivated. We need to be focused and motivated on this community's needs only. I'm not worried about who the political masters are. They are voted by the community to represent the community, and they need to be held responsible and accountable by this community for their lack of actions. There's no doubts about that. So, in a nutshell, we're completely apolitical, and I confirm we're not a politician, and we are definitely not fielding any candidates in the next elections. And we certainly won't be endorsing any candidates within the next elections either. We want to remain completely neutral, but we will certainly allow any political party who wants to take the opportunity to introduce themselves and their candidates to the area and to try and motivate why they would be the best person. We will give them a platform, just as much as we would support the city in that endeavour.
Can we ask that that happens sooner than later, because we've got elections in a year's time and we need to make important decisions in this area?
Is that supported by the floor?
Chair, I need to remind you that we vote for parties, not individuals. We get the individuals that the parties voice on us.
I agree, but we need the individuals here to come and explain what their party stands for. I mean, we are mostly a DA community, and yet we don't have one DA councillor here tonight. We have an ACDC. Is it
I fully agree with you. I just wanted to correct the statement that we're voting for individuals. We don't get that right in this country.
And possibly what we can do is look towards getting party representation to tell us exactly what they stand for then. All right. I will thank Julius tomorrow morning.
So he sits on sub-council meetings and is part of the decision making on what the city does. So essentially the city isn't necessarily run by just one political party. There's a lot of different politicians involved. So you've got to clarify. Do I explain to you?
Again, I'm the wrong one to answer all these questions. However, I will say that on all the committees you sit on, everything is run by a democratic vote. People will listen to a motion, they will vote on the motion, and the motion will carry forward. As Mr. Mata said earlier, motions are opposed, motions are approved, and yet they still seem to go through to final count, and they go against the residents' wishes. So we need to take an active role in that. One of the other issues that has been raised over the last month is that the TVRA does not support neighbourhood watches or the community police forum. I think our chair here tonight, Dave Harris as well, we will support any organisation that furthers the aim of this community, first and foremost. We will always do that. Like we will support every single community member who stood up in terms of Earth 1117, we will stand up for every organisation without fail. And they will support us. We need to get that sorted, please. We've been accused of excommunication of previous EXCO members. There seems to be some confusion there as well. We've looked at that and we're battling with the excommunication factor because the last time that was used in a sentence was during the Spanish Inquisition. However, people need to understand that when an EXCO is voted in, they're voted in by the community, and if the community doesn't have the confidence in somebody, they're not going to re-vote them. Unfortunately, there are one or two members from the EXCO that are very upset about this, and I apologize profusely to them. But we are limited by the number of seats that we have available, and we've got to make the most of it. The other aspect that has been brought up, and it seems to be brought up on a regular basis, is the legitimacy of the current TVRA EXCO. Let me be very clear with everybody. Everybody lives in the area. We meet all the mandated requirements. We were voted in by a community of residents and ratepayers, and we were voted in at a special general meeting. Are there any concerns with anybody that represents this community? If nothing, nobody that doesn't like sugar, I'll support it too, and her husband's voting as well. Okay, so let's put that down to bed and let's close those doors. The ones that do worry me are the ones where we get asked to exclude residents in the Ratepayers Association. It's something I feel very, very strongly about, and the email I received last week was actually quite an insulting email. We cannot exclude residents from this Ratepayers Association. They have a vested interest. We cannot exclude anybody from this ratepayers as if they have bona fide reasons to join, and And the more people that join, the better we will be, the more inclusive we will be, and the more we will get right. If we limit membership on this association to ratepayers only, we become exclusive. And that, I'm sure everybody will agree, is not something we want. It's got to be open up. It's got to open up. We've got to be all inclusive. Because
surely ratepayers means ratepayers.
we, going back prior to 2013, where the Ratepayers Association was the Ratepayers Association, the constitution was changed in a special general meeting, but the name was never updated. It should be Ratepayers and Residents, I agree. That was done at a special general meeting, and we are looking at various other changes to the Constitution that we believe will work in the favour of the Constitution and the community. But those type of changes we need to bring in over an extended period, so we've got time to explore every single avenue, think of every change, because all changes will have an impact somewhere down the line. It's not something we can rush into.
On that question, the general feeling at the time was that people that don't own properties in the area, they might only be renting. In a roundabout way, they are paying rates because the owner of the property would include the rates with the rental amount. It wasn't only limited to that at the time. I remember when we were working on it, we were also looking at if you live in the area, even though if you go to the shop, to the Pick and Pay, to Bayside Mall, if you are supporting the local businesses in this area, you are effectively also contributing to rate because they pay rates. If you use the petrol station, you know, all those things.
But what I'm saying is a ratepayer is a ratepayer. That is the definition, ratepayer.
I fully agree with you, but like I said, ratepayers also included people living in the area that also contributes to rates.
I don't agree with you, I'm afraid.
Excuse me?
I don't agree with you. Because a lot of rental properties, you drive through the areas, you can see where the homes are well kept. Landlords do not concern themselves.
But your rates aren't based on how well your property is kept. Your rates aren't based on how well your property is kept.
I'm talking about the rights of a ratepayer as opposed to a tenant. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Rental properties are owned by landlords who do not really care as to the upkeep of their properties.
That's a big mistake. Just to go in the mistake, we also deal with a lot of landlords and a lot of tenants. And we've got landlords that actually have agreements in place with their tenants that should a plant die, should the garden not be watered, should the property not be upkept, there will be penalties because they have an invested interest. And if their property is left to ruin, they lose money. Bottom line.
I have two properties, and that's exactly my
As I said early on, I just mentioned this now, you look at the portion of this area that is rented out, it's massive. It's massive. So now you can have an entire crescent, 70% of a crescent being rented out. And now because that person who's sitting in Sea Point or sitting in Camps Bay isn't here, he doesn't care because he's a landlord. Now all the tenants suffer because they're spending in excess of 10, 15,000 rand a month to live in a place. Now they don't have a voice.
Well, what was very interesting is two things. Is about 8 years ago.
About 8 years ago, I received a letter from the Ratepayers Association, and they told me that if I didn't look after my verge, they were going to do it for me at exorbitant rates. Guess what I did? Looked after it. And that Ratepayers Association had people driving around the community, sending letters to community members and saying, hey, wake up. And we need to investigate that. We need to look at that. The city has wonderful legislation. It's called problem buildings. Involved more often. In terms of looking after the area. If people are stepping out of line and they're bringing the area down, this is what the Ratepayers Association needs to be. We need to get hold of the errant landlords. We need to say to them, hey, catch a wake up. We know the unit where, unfortunately, it was abused to the point that the city went in and said, we're taking it back unless you do something. Guess what happened? Something was done very quickly. But it all boils down to what people do and how people react to it. And if nobody's taking notice, there won't be any change. It has to start small and it has to start somewhere. And it starts in this room. We have to collectively,
Sorry, I take offense to generalization. I'm renting our property and I started our street committee. I am an active member in our street committee. We have, out of 80 houses, we've got 60 people on our committee. We deal with giving responsibly. I have managed to get the whole community together. We've had 2 successful social things. Everyone looks after their verges. And I think the fact that I am here representing my street is showing that I give a shit.
But this is why we need to take the point and say, let's accept the good in everybody. Let's allow people in to make comments.
If you give them responsibility by being part of the Ratepayers Association, they will take more pride in where they live and how their houses look and what they contribute to the community.
If you look where the informal trading site is proposed in Parkland's main road, if you're facing that site, you look slightly to the left, you'll notice a small little shopping mall. I went and I spoke to the owners there. Not one owner is European. They're all foreigners. They all have come into South Africa with absolutely nothing. And when they were told that informal trading is coming to the area, and I'm going to use the term without consultation, because none of them, not a single one of them was approached by the city. They were all broken-hearted. All of them own property in Parklands. I've been to 2 of their houses personally, and let me tell you something, their houses look superb. Why? Because they have a vested interest in this community. We need ratepayers and residents to realize that one is not better than the other. We need to give them credit where credit is due. You have chosen to live in this area. Let's be all inclusive. And you know what? We'll find that they're not so much different to us.
We excluded our peril.
I don't think I could have said that better. We do. And we exclude at our own peril. Any other questions?
It's a ratepayers association, not a homeowners association.
No, it's different.
I'm stating it. I'm saying this is a ratepayers association, not a homeowners association.
Thank you. They get very violent.
I'm not violent yet.
Change the name if it's such a problem.
Any other questions or concerns from the floor before we call it evening, ma'am? Sorry. Does the Ratepayers Association?
Of course. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That I've been linked to a political party. I have always maintained that I'm absolutely independent. I caused offence and refuse my apologies, but it's certainly young. Somebody introduced themselves to me earlier that they were a member of another different political party. And before they could go any further, I turned around to them and said to them, welcome to the Ratepayers Association, we're yours. And I mean that. I don't care who the political party is. We will invite political parties to specific meetings to introduce themselves. Let them try and tell us what they can do for us in our own area.
Including the ANC.
I would be very honest with you. I mean all political parties.
White people? Am I one welcome?
Are you white? Are you white? Absolutely. There is no... We can't afford to go back to where the Ratepayers Association was a couple of months ago. We've got to be completely encompassing of all cultures and creeds.
Why not just call it the Residents Association?
That's a good proposal.
So is that an official proposal?
Second. I second.
Okay, can I get your name, please? Sorry? What is the Mr. Hayden Binns, B-I-N-N-S, has proposed, he's put a proposal on the floor that has been seconded, approved and seconded, although we still have to go to a special general meeting, so it's not approved for an immediate change, is that we rename the association the Residents Association. Is that correct, sir?
Table View Residents Association.
Table View Residents Association sounds even better. Going, gone. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to raise, Ms. Williams?
Can we just have the founding of 3417? Where are we actually going to from here? What is the action plan of the Table View Ratepayers Association?
Okay, it'll have to be 2 words. The first one Des will deal with in terms of how the community will move forward in terms of Earth 1117. The second part I'll deal with, which will relate to the forged documents. From a forged document perspective, we are now waiting on the city to either confirm the allegation of forgery or to withdraw the allegation of forgery. How they deal with that is how we will deal with that aspect moving forward. But it is very important that we realize that there are no, what was the term they used in terms of misconstrued information? Hidden agendas. Absolutely. We need the city to understand that the only hidden agenda is rather transparent, and that hidden agenda is very clearly, we have a community of very, very interested members who want to see this area improve, and we want to see this area have sustainability. We want it to be comfortable and we want to be safe. Des, if you could just answer the first question and then finish off, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love the ACDC. As far as the 1117 is concerned, because we're exactly apolitical, we will take the help from anywhere we can get it. There is also another political party which actually contacted me and said, please tell us what is this about fraudulent documents. That word seems to have triggered a lot of things with a lot of people. So we are going to move forward, first of all, dealing with the fraudulent document part of it. If the city falls flat on their face, which they will, we will then take it further and we will involve any party. From our side, I will speak to any person that's willing to take my hand and walk us through, and I will not be stopped, and I'm going to say it, by the speaker who tried to do it. The speaker actually said to us, he opened his statement by saying, our political opposition are all standing for high-density development, and I went on. Okay, that was a surprise. Mike.
Mr. Long, can I also just clarify that at that meeting, the speaker was also very clear that it is being investigated, the accusations, and it's sub judice, so we couldn't actually ask all the relevant questions we wanted to know. And further to that, when we asked, will we be allowed to know what the outcome of the investigation is and when, his response simply was that he will decide whether he will let us know.
That's correct. And I think one of the EXCO members actually said to him also that seeing that you're saying you're wasting the ratepayers' money, we must be entitled to the outcome of the investigation. His comment was, if I found it to be round, I'll throw it out of the window. Sure.
Since you are using the ratepayers' money to do the investigation, surely the ratepayers have a right to have the outcome of monies that they just spent on the investigation, and then he said he will consider whether he'll make that the outcome available to us.
Correct. And on and I've sent him further, just asked him to give me a time frame how long this whole investigation is going to take. Mr. Chair, may I quickly divert to the 37157. In light of what happened over the past 3-4 hours, again a councillor taking me on and calling me a liar. Our other pet project is the 37157, which is more commonly known as the Flandorf land claim or institution claim. The reply I got from Mr. Michael Worship was that the family was dispossessed of Irvin 13018, 12826, 11472, 14812, 14815, 12388, and the remainder of 12389 in Goodwood plus in Barrow, another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Irvin. I think Shula can bear me out. The councillor some time ago said there were 6 objections that were noted or logged in the city's official database. By April there were 6. I've got here, I've printed out objections that were received by the city on the 19th of March, only on one day. It was 108 objections, which I've actually got the objection itself, the document. I've asked Councillor McCarthy to please, before tonight's meeting, confirm whether there were still 6 objections or not. She, like a good taxi driver and me being a red robot, she totally ignored me. When I then became very vocal and said, why do you reply to Shula on other issues and you still ignore me? She said to me, and I read to you, I've replied these forms of please don't manufacture reference to pick a fight. And she carries on saying that they were on holiday and they said check with your chairman before making wild accusations. I immediately called the chairman and I said, have you heard anything from Councillor McCarthy? And he said, no, not a word. So obviously the city is also trying to jump through some fancy loops on that one. We will try and go further into that. I'll issue on 37157 and also report back to you later. Thank you.
Okay, we're coming to the close of our meeting this evening. Just some good news for everybody and for the community, in fact, is we have now initiated a program where the Ratepayers Association will be releasing a newsletter. Newsletter will refer to pertinent documents you should be aware of, what's happening in the area, etc., etc. We've obviously discussed the reduction in fees, but the big one is we're now in a position where tomorrow afternoon we should be going live. We now have an 0861 number that will be communicated throughout the community that will give you direct access to your local representatives on the TVRA 24 hours a day. What will happen is if there's something urgent, you will phone a number, you will select which representative you wish to speak to, 2 o'clock in the morning. If you wish to renew your application, feel free to phone Stephen. What will happen is you will never, the facility will never be answered. It'll pick it up and it'll email the message that you leave to the respective representative. He will pick it up and he will get back to you. Obviously, if it's an emergency, he'll get back to you immediately. But that avenue is there. Sometimes it's a lot easier with smart telephony in an emergency. Our next meeting is scheduled, I believe, for the 7th of August. It'll be in the same venue at 7 p.m. Please, please, please reiterate to all your neighbours, your colleagues, your friends, that this Ratepayers Association does need your support. This community needs your support, and more importantly, we need to lend support to each other. So when we deal with the fireworks, we need everybody to attend and reciprocate. When we're dealing with Earth 1117, we need everybody to buy in. It's not just a Bloberg issue, it's not just a Tableview issue, it's not just a Parklands issue, it's our issue. And for those of you that are not members of the neighborhood watch, CPF, please go up, join the guys, get involved, get active, and help us come up with solutions in the area. One question, somebody raise a hand, yes.
Mr. Chair, the 7th is on a Friday. Maybe not the 3rd is a Monday.
Well, unless we're having a disco at the meeting, and then it would be the first Monday of every new month. So it would be the 3rd then. My apologies, I'm correcting it to the 3rd. If anybody wishes to speak to me after the meeting, please do. I will be here for the next 24 hours. So please, thank you very much for attending, and thank you. Good night.